Namaste, hello, and welcome to the Indian Abroad on NDTV. I'm your host, Priyanka Deo. The topic of the day, Trump's tariff games explained. In most negotiations, people assume success comes from persuasion or compromise at the table. But those who understand game theory know the real strategy starts long before the first conversation. Game theory is the study of strategic decision-making. It helps you anticipate your counterparts' likely responses, limit their choices, and frame the game in your favor from the start. Now, Trump's strategy is setting the rules before the game really starts. One of the clearest real-world examples of game theory in action was Donald Trump's, or I should say is Donald Trump's aggressive use of tariffs during his presidency and campaign trail. He didn't wait to negotiate. He imposed tariffs first and then invited trade partners to the table, often under high pressure and high stakes. For instance, Trump recently announced a 35% tariff on Canadian goods, a 30% tariff on imports from Mexico and the EU, and floated a 15 to 20% blanket tariff on most major trading partners. These bold, headline-making moves are not random or reactionary. They're actually strategic. They're tactical. By acting first and going public, Trump changes the entire dynamic of the negotiation. He forces other countries into a defensive position where reacting becomes the priority, not bargaining from strength. This tactic fits the game theory principle of limiting the other side's options. They must either concede or they must escalate. Now, structuring the game before it starts, how does that work here? A fundamental game theory principle is to shape the process before anyone enters the room. Trump has mastered this by forcing urgency with public declarations. His team would often signal intentions through media interviews, tweets, or formal letters, effectively locking in their stance before talks even begin. This is similar to what the European Union did during Brexit negotiations. The EU refused to move forward on future trade until the UK finalized the withdrawal agreement. By sequencing the discussion strategically, they prevented the UK from leveraging major issues early in the process. Trump used a very similar sequencing trick. For example, by threatening auto tariffs, he created enough pressure on countries like Japan, Germany, and South Korea to fast-track bilateral talks. The structure itself becomes a pressure tool. So, why does limiting choices create leverage? In game theory, power comes from reducing the other party's freedom to maneuver. Trump's announcements typically cornered countries with very few alternatives. Either accept tariffs and damage exports, or come to the table and start talking, start negotiating. This strategy is high risk and often seen as unconventional in diplomacy. But for Trump, it works because it appeared credible. He rarely gave himself an easy exit. That forced counterparts to believe that he would follow through. When he sent a letter, for example, to EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announcing 30% tariffs on EU goods on top of existing tariffs, the EU immediately responded. Though they opposed the tariffs, they expressed a desire to keep negotiating. That quick response, even without any agreement, achieved Trump's goal to move them into reaction mode, to move them into defense mode and back to the table. So how does Trump use loss aversion? Another tactic that Trump consistently taps into, consciously or not, is loss aversion. People are more motivated to avoid losses than to achieve gains, and Trump often frames negotiations in terms of what the other party will lose if they do not act. This showed up when he gave companies or countries limited windows to respond to U.S. demands or risk being hit with penalties. Creating a ticking clock flips the mindset of a negotiation from opportunity to crisis control, a state where counterparts are more likely to concede. By doing this repeatedly, Trump trained others to treat every offer as time-sensitive and high stakes. That kind of psychological pressure, especially in public view, boosts leverage exponentially. Now, power comes from options and commitment here. Game theory actually defines power in two key ways. Number one, having credible alternatives. When Trump talked about diversifying supply chains or sourcing goods domestically, even if not immediately realistic, it signaled fallback options. That alone gave him more room to demand concessions. Number two, committing to your course of action. Trump rarely left room for doubt here. When he said that he would impose tariffs, he did follow through. This made these threats feel real and made foreign leaders more cautious in opposing him. A powerful negotiation move is combining clear commitment with credible alternatives. Businesses do this by preparing substitute suppliers, and Trump did it through executive orders, tariffs, and strategic messaging. Avoiding deadlock through preparation is another tactic. In complex negotiations, deadlock is a common risk. Trump's strategy often avoided this by creating pressure points early and making the cost of inaction appear high. He did not rely on last-minute appeals. He in fact structured the negotiation to force movement. If you notice, Trump is using the same tactic on Putin, pressurizing with high tariffs to get Putin to stop the Russia-Ukraine war. From a game theory perspective, this is actually a very smart strategy. If the other party believes that stalling leads to worse outcomes, they're more likely to make concessions early. Trump's public tactics, such as tweeting upcoming deadlines or threatening new penalties, were all designed to force decisions quickly. Trump's tariffs, if fully implemented, would no doubt create a short-term chaos and disrupt multiple economies across the world. But viewed through the lens of negotiation and strategy, especially via game theory, they are not simply trade policies. They're actually a strategic tool, a high-stakes move designed to force engagement, to reset leverage, and to ultimately bring countries onto an equal playing field. And it's working so far. Countries have come to the table and are paying importance to Trump's threat. It's even resulted in some deals already made. Trump's strategy isn't about endless dialogue here, nor is it about actually enforcing tariffs unless the other country takes no heed, which has so far not happened. Then, Trump's tariff strategy seems to be more about setting the terms early, projecting strength, and then compelling action. So what's the bottom line here? Whether in diplomacy or business, these tactics shift power towards the person who shapes the game itself, not just how it's played. Trump understands that perception of power is power, and so far, it's working. Thanks for watching The Indian Abroad. Stay tuned for more. Until next time, this is Priyanka Deo signing off. Namaste.